My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon of my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. In today's Gospel, we're told twice that Jesus is going up to Jerusalem. The first line begins, Jesus was going up to Jerusalem. And on the way he took the 12 to one side and said to them, now we are going up to Jerusalem. And then he begins to tell the apostles that he is going to suffer terribly, to be condemned to death, to be handed over to the pagans, to be mocked and scourged and crucified by them. And then on the third day that he will rise again. Well, if you have ever been to Jerusalem, you realize that when Jesus says, we are going up to Jerusalem, he means that very literally, because they're certainly going up, no matter where they're coming from. In Israel, they're going up, because Jerusalem is rather at the top of a, mountain of about 2,500 feet, or mountain range. So wherever you're coming from in Israel, you're really going up to Jerusalem, because you're going uphill. And that is perhaps one of the things that Jesus means when he says we're going up to Jerusalem, not just we're going in the direction of Jerusalem. But of course, Jesus says that he is going there to die. But one of those who hears him is the mother of Zebedee's sons, as she's called. So the wife of a man called Zebedee. We could call her Mrs. Zebedee. She doesn't really understand what Jesus means when he says these things. And in a way that's kind of strange, she then approaches Jesus and she says to him that she wants him to ensure that her two sons, who are James and John, very well known, that they would sit one at your right hand and the other at your left hand in your kingdom. In other words, she thinks Jesus is going up to Jerusalem to triumph, that this is his ascent to a throne, a moment of his final kind of glory in this world. And she, I suppose, being a kind of an ambitious mother, she wants that her little sons, John and James, would there be right beside him with the plum positions, and that they would be therefore glorified. And everybody would say, wow, what wonderful children Mrs. Zebedee has. She must be a great woman. Now, Jesus very politely explains to her that she has kind of got it wrong. He says to her, you do not know what you're asking. And then Jesus asks James and John if they can drink the cup that he's going to drink. Of course, we know now this is a cup of suffering. And they say they can. And Jesus says, well, then you're going to drink it, but I can't guarantee you those seats, which seems a little bit like a trick. You feel a little bit sorry for John and James. Maybe they thought, well, we're going to get this position. Are these two plum jobs in the great kingdom that Jesus is about to inaugurate in Jerusalem? But instead, they get guaranteed this cup of suffering. So you feel a little bit sorry for them. But what happens next is kind of worse still. And that is that the other 10 apostles were told that they get very indignant with the two brothers who just landed, it appears. Again, they don't really understand what's going on, but they think, well, James and John have just got the two top positions in Jesus' kingdom, which is about to start when we ascend to Jerusalem. And they're indignant. We can start, I don't think they pushed poor James and John around the place, but verbally a little bit, saying, giving out to them, how would you do this? Now, the funny thing is, that is you and that is me. When a friend of yours gets the best student of the year, or a guy or a girl that you were after is snatched up by somebody else, or a colleague gets a promotion that you should have got, well, then what happens to us? We go green with envy, and we even start mistreating that person because we are envious. Now, Jesus sees this, and so he calls over the apostles to himself, and he says to them, look, that's the way the pagans work. They want to lord it over people. They want people to feel their authority. But he says, this is not to happen among you. And that means you and me. He says, if you want to be great, you have to be small. You have to be a servant, even a slave. Just as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So look what Jesus is saying to you and to me. Look, I didn't come to be a super success, to get the top positions, to have glory, to have people telling me I was wonderful. Rather, I came because I just want to serve people with the kind of jobs that people don't even notice. You can imagine, well, actually, Jesus gives us a very, very dramatic example of the kind of job he wants to do, washing people's feet. But you and I, secretly, because we don't say it so openly, we want to be the dominant one. And we're a bit like Walter Mitty, that famous character, who's a weak and henpecked husband who imagines himself. He goes off on these flights of fancy, and he imagines himself one moment to be a world-famous surgeon, and the next moment he thinks he's a World War II fighter pilot, a hero, and everybody is whispering his name in awe. There's a famous litany about humility. It's called the Litany of Humility, apparently composed by Cardinal Mary del Val, very famous, very holy secretary to Pope St. Pius X. And he asks Jesus to free us from these desires to triumph that we have. It's longish. I'm just gonna quote the first part of it, where he says, from the desire of being, and he gives out several kind of examples of the kind of things you and I secretly, because we don't tell people, except maybe in confession, we secretly desire these things. From the desire of being esteemed, considered an important person, that is, Jesus, deliver me, O Jesus, he says. From the desire of being loved, people approving of our podcast, for instance. From the desire of being extolled, or people look at him, look at her, she or he is an example to us all. That's being extolled. From the desire of being honored, the world famous surgeon, for example. From the desire of being praised, again, deliver me, O Jesus. From the desire of being preferred to others. How we love that. Somebody I know, well, jokingly, but when he's praised and people say, oh, I prefer you to anybody else, he purrs like a cat. From the desire of being consulted. Again, how we love it when people say, oh, excuse me, can I pick your extensive brains? Because I hear you're so clever. I purr like a cat. From the desire of being approved, deliver me, O Jesus. And we look at Jesus, that in his life, for much of his life, Jesus did none of these things, and definitely not in the Passion. When he's disgraced, he's hated, he's shamed, mocked. Remember, Barabbas is preferred to him by almost all of Jerusalem. So, as Jesus says at the beginning of today's gospel, we are going up to Jerusalem, not to be above others, but rather to be with you, Jesus, to serve others. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask you for help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.